Hello, this is Brian Funk, and thank you for listening to the Music Production Podcast. I'm very excited to announce that my new book, The 5-Minute Music Producer, is now available in paperback form, a real book that you can hold and touch and turn to any page you like in a second. And it's a pretty big book, 629 pages of activities, exercises, and wisdom I've learned over the years. It's available on Amazon.com. The 5-Minute Music Producer is 365 music-making activities that will help with your songwriting and music production. It'll help you fight writer's block, make more music, write better lyrics, develop solid workflows, learn techniques for generating ideas, and finish more music. It's like having your very own music production personal trainer giving you ideas and challenges each day. And the best part is the challenges are quick and easy, and they only take a few minutes. So even if you don't have a lot of time, you can spend 5 minutes and advance your music production skills. There's no better time to improve your music than now. Imagine where you'll be after a year of these activities. The 5-Minute Music Producer has hit the #1 new release in the music songwriting and music recording and sound categories on Amazon. So check out the 5-Minute Music Producer, 365 music-making activities. It's available on Amazon.com, or you can go to brianfunk.com/book. Hello, everybody. Welcome to the Music Production Podcast. I'm your host, Brian Funk, and on today's show, I have Ebonie Smith. Ebonie Smith is an award-winning music producer, audio engineer, songwriter, the in-house engineer for Atlantic Records. She's the founder and president of Gender Amplified. She's worked with so many people, from Cardi B to Charlie Puth, Kodak Black, The Roots, Miss Lauryn Hill. Legends in there, really. On my last episode of the show, I talked about imposter syndrome. And one of the things I mentioned was sometimes on this podcast, I say to myself, what did I do to get to talk to some of these guests? And you're a good example of that kind of person, Ebonie. Welcome to the show. It's great to have you.
Thank you. Thanks for having me. Glad to be here.
Yeah, it's really nice to talk to you. As I mentioned to you earlier, you first came on my radar through Ableton, through some of the work you were doing with them. You were at Loop, and I think in some videos too. So I thought you had a really cool outlook on music. And one thing I read that I really enjoyed was about how meticulously you like to recreate hit tracks, for your own education. I thought that was like a really cool way to go about it, because as a guitar player, like, you do that learning songs, but to do it from like an engineer standpoint is a great way to learn the craft.
Absolutely. I still do that. That's actually a tip I got from a professor at NYU when I was there. His name was Prince Charles Alexander. And he said that remaking songs, doing remakes, was one of the best ways to learn. And it couldn't be more true, right? Because there's so much that you can discern from analyzing a song. The same is true, like you mentioned, for listening to compositions and trying to kind of reverse engineer how certain parts are played and how certain progressions work. Well, you're doing all that when you remake a track and more, right? You're listening to the sound design elements as well as the compositional elements, even paying close attention to things like length. I'm able to extract information about balance and mix. My mixes have gotten exponentially better from listening to the top mixing engineers and how they are creating these tracks, how they are building the balance, because in modern music, so much of the quality of the production is really the quality of the mix. So many of the elements are sound design based these days. And if I'm fortunate enough, and in some cases I might be, I'll just text the mixing engineer, whoever made the top Lizzo track or, the top Bruno Mars track. In some cases, I'm fortunate enough to know these engineers personally, and I can ask them, what you do, like, how did you get the bass to sound like this? Or what kind of parallel compression are you using here? Like, what did you do here? What did you do there? But before that was the case, I would just have to listen and attempt to really figure out what was going on. And I still find that to be a very useful exercise in terms of learning, because you never get to the point where you've learned it all. I have a good understanding of many genres, but they're very small elements that determine what a genre is and what a genre isn't. Like, for example, some genres are defined by the fact that they've just moved the snare to a different beat. You can create a whole new genre, the same elements, and create a whole new genre by just changing the percussive elements. That's a very small thing. That's a major thing. Some records are what they are because the snare is tuned a certain way. You won't find high pitched snares in certain genres of music, and it's a small thing, or certain kind of genres of hip hop, or certain areas of EDM. Listening to these things, you'll see patterns over many records, and studying really what makes a track memorable. And sometimes that's not exclusively the melody and lyric.
Yeah, it's got to be such a great practice, just because you're probably uncovering a lot of surprises, I'd imagine, right? Like there's critical listening where you pay close attention, but sometimes when you actually try to pull things apart and figure out how it was made, you're like, oh, well, look at that. There's something special going on here.
Absolutely. There are always surprises. There are always producers working outside of the confines of a genre. Once you identify what makes a genre, then you can start to bend the rules a little bit. And that's where some of those surprises come from. For example, right now I'm studying lo-fi and lo-fi production. What makes that genre feel interesting to the listener? And there are lots of surprises. And when you start following some of these producers and you think about the tools that they use, whether those be digital or analog tools, there are lots of gems that I find and I go, I would have never figured that out on my own. And there's always something to learn by studying.
Yeah, it's a hot genre right now. And it's an interesting one because, lo-fi like makes you think like low quality sometimes. But there's a lot of attention to detail that goes into that to make it sound a certain way and evoke those feelings, whether it's like nostalgia or some. Are there any like particular interesting techniques or tricks you noticed in that particular genre?
I'm still figuring it out. I think one of the things that is the first thing that strikes you is the chord selection, right? Lo-fi, to me, when it's the most satisfying is when the compositional choices involve, traditional jazz flavorings, very few triads, like I like hearing lo-fi records that are using major sevenths and ninth chords, 11th chords, creating very complicated chord structures, kind of using, naturals and accidentals that, you might not find in traditional pop music, that can be, a space where you want to simplify your chorus as much as possible, and find the complexity in the simplicity. I think one of the first things I notice is how the chords are built around creating that moodiness, right? That if I were to use a color, I would call it a bit of a blue, moody compositional choices. Obviously, there's drums. The drums are much more subdued in lo-fi, and I think that's why the genre has become what it has, because in a world where drums have become so pervasive, the percussive elements can be so bombastic. We've become quite accustomed to that. Within the last 30 years, lo-fi is actually challenging that norm substantially by saying not only can drums be way lower in the mix, but they can be muted practically. Right? You can completely low pass drums and they can still have an effect. And it creates for a sonic landscape that is, to me, is very satisfying. It makes for great background music. You're not very easily distracted by the rhythmic compositional elements. They're literally there in support. And when you think about other genres where that is the case, I think about rock music, for example, rock music can have extremely bombastic drums. Then when you think about older rock music before, they really had the reinforcement of bass. Kind of some of the early rock and roll records, the drums are way kind of tucked, and the bass may have more prominence, in fact. So it kind of harkens back to the idea that you can have a substantial amount of energy in the rhythmic space without necessarily having a huge dynamic range or having the volume be so loud. You can really kind of attenuate those elements and still have there be the feeling of great rhythmic intensity. Lo-fi doesn't have a ton of rhythmic intensity necessarily in the drums, but you can still feel the drums. They serve a purpose and they push the composition along its journey. So, making those connections between various genres, but also identifying what it is about lo-fi that makes it what it is. In addition to, I would say one more thing is the use of forms of saturation, tape emulators, vinyl emulators, introducing noise elements, which is something that is, originally was considered fairly problematic in sound reinforcement technology and music production, in our desire to move towards high fidelity and sound and sound reproduction. But ironically enough, it is the cornerstone of lo-fi. So attempting to find those elements where the noise floor is elevated to such an extent that it becomes its own instrumental device or its own sonic coloring that gives the track a sense of space. I think that's what the noise really adds, is a sense of atmosphere. In addition to it having a ambient and even nostalgic character, it also serves as a sonic template or a bit of a sonic signature in the lo-fi space.
Yeah, it sort of gives it a place to exist, that noise. I grew up recording on 4-track cassette recorders and longing for the days where I could get rid of that noise and wishing that I had, all the things we have now, all the limitless tracks and every instrument I could possibly dream of is available. But now I find myself trying to reintroduce a lot of those problems, in quotation marks, problems, because they have a feel. Sometimes the sterile silence of your digital recording can just sound like it's not there. It's not anywhere. And the tape hiss, the vinyl crack, all those little things do a lot to fill that in and take you somewhere.
Definitely helps to build out environment for sure.
I hadn't thought about the drums though, like you said, because you're right. So much music, production techniques have gotten advanced so much in the technology to have really in-your-face drums, clear, clean, and dominate the mix, and all the tricks we've learned to make those stand out so loud and still be able to hear everything else in between. Lo-fi is really kind of saying like, hey, relax. And it's like very in line with the entire vibe of the genre. Just, hey.
Absolutely. And the drums still manage to be impactful, even though they've been, substantially subdued by whatever manipulations the producers have used to create that sound. I like to think that it's a more rounded sound. In fact, like the transients are not as prickly and are not as dynamically forceful, but you still get a sense of a much more rounded transient on the attacks of your percussive elements. It still works. It still can be felt. It still has impact and influence.
A little bit like that cassette tape has been played too many times.
Right.
That's cool. That's a lot of time. That's a lot of insight for the way you opened that by saying, I'm just getting started, so it gives me an idea of just how deep you really like to go in these studies.
I love it. It's the best part of being a producer. It's learning and growing in the craft and in musicianship, one of the first elements I spoke about was the compositional keys, the choices for keys and chordal information. It's taken me into an area of study on the piano and the keyboards that has been very rewarding just in general as I expand my craft as a musician. And it's the best part of it really is study and learning and growing as an artist.
Yeah, it's a great attitude to have too, that you kind of never master it and there's always so much to learn. I mean, someone in your position could kind of say like, well, I've kind of figured a few things out, so I'm good here. But it's nice to see that perspective of just there's so much to take in and learn. So I wanted to ask you a little bit about Gender Amplified, because this is a really great cause and great thing that you're doing. Do you want to introduce it in your own way?
Sure. Gender Amplified is a nonprofit, 501c3 incorporated in New York State. And we work to advance the experience of women who are working as engineers, music producers, who are aspiring to be engineers and producers. We reach our mission statement to support them and help advance them by holding music production camps and events, most of which are held in New York City. Our latest camp series is called the Control Room series, and we have combined a cohort of 17 producers that we hold camps for every couple months, usually 4 months out of the year. And from that, we try to help them find opportunities to place their music, but also we help them find each other. And I think that's one of the most important resources that we offer is the connecting of women and non-binary producers. When I started Gender Amplified, we primarily focused on cisgender, female identified music producers. And, to this day, we've also included expanded our reach to also include non-binary creatives and trans creatives. So, the most important thing is, to use music production as a vehicle to help connect these producers, and in some cases also to help them boost their self-esteem and give them resources to get out there and do what it is that they do and to become successful at it.
Yeah, that's great. I mean, community is really just such a huge part of it. It's especially, I think, when you're getting started too. It's music production really for anybody is like kind of a weird thing. It's not. There's no one on your street that does it usually, right?
Right. If you're lucky, if you're as lucky as Jermaine Dupri, you kind of grew up on the same street as Dallas Austin. You can.
Sometimes, I guess, lucky. Right? I wonder if there's any causal effect of that, though, too, like the interest. But it makes a big difference, and just to have people to talk to. And it's one of the reasons I started the podcast is, the people in my life are supportive and kind, but to get into the nitty gritty sometimes, I lose them, so, and understandably so, as I'm sure I get lost in some of their interests. But to find those people, and especially when you run into challenges and roadblocks along the way, to have that support is so helpful.
Absolutely. 100%.
So is it specifically like 17 people at a time? Is that a number for any reason?
We've chosen the cohort because of our studio partner. To be honest, our studio partner can only really accommodate a certain number of producers, and we want to keep it small so that we can keep our hands on all of them as they're progressing. For us, it's quality over quantity. We're not a membership-based organization. We identify producers that are hungry. We can't engineer hunger. We can't, make them want it. There's an application process. There are things that we are looking for in these artists. And we want to be a resource that they can go to. On a producer's journey into the music business, they hear lots of no's, and we like to be one of the resources available to them that is a yes, and really helping them identify their cohort of creatives that they feel like they can move forward with. And that takes time. That takes being extremely selective, extremely focused. And it's hard, in my opinion, especially given the size of our organization, to do the work that we want to do if we overreach. I would rather successfully help a handful than attempt to help so many, and not be able to properly deliver. Having said that, our vision is certainly to grow. But we feel that, these years that we're building out the Control Room series, which we started in 2019, have been years of identifying the best curriculum for us so that we can implement that and institutionalize it so that we can scale properly and in time.
Right, to figure out what's working, what's not.
Exactly.
Yeah, in any kind of like classroom situation. I teach high school English. I teach production for a class for Berkeley Online.
Nice.
And when it gets too big, and I was wondering if 17 was a number for some reason, because I find like once you start getting over like 20 something, it stops being like there's Ebonie, there's Bob, there's Mary.
Right, exactly.
And it's just a bunch of, it's one crowd now. And
right.
I was curious if you found the magic number, maybe, because it might be something like 17, but it's really nice that you're able to give that more individualized attention and really get to know the people so that you can figure out how to help them best.
I think that's one of the things that I enjoy the most is knowing everybody by name, knowing what they do individually, knowing their strengths and weaknesses. The more camps we do with this particular cohort, you start to see where everybody shines, right? Like some artists are incredible vocalists, and some, and they're all producers. Don't get me wrong; they're all music producers, but there's some that may be, in addition to be producers, they're actually great top liners, actually really great demo singers, great artists in their own right. And when paired with, let's say, an incredible engineer or an incredible beat maker, when you put them all together, they make incredible music. By focusing in on these pairings and thinking critically about, which artists, which producers will work well together if you were to mix and match them. And that's something that I like to commend our operations manager, Natalie Sears, who is one of the driving forces behind the camps and identifying everybody's strengths and weaknesses. And it's only because our group is small and manageable that we're able to do that. And the most important thing for us is that the camps that we're putting together, these artists are getting as much out of them as they possibly can. And I think the other thing that I'm really grateful for is the fact that these producers work together outside of our camps. We put together people who had never met each other before, and now they're making records together outside of the space that we've created for them. And hopefully we've built lifelong partnerships and musical relationships between these artists.
Well, that's such an important part too, to have people that complement your skills, that fill in where maybe you need some help and where you can come in and, have your strengths shine through. Though I imagine one of the challenges must be, any kind of art, right? Is you get pretty vulnerable with it. And
yes.
You have to get comfortable. It's very hard to get strangers to open up like that. Do you have any kind of methods or strategies to facilitate that kind of stuff?
Do you mean in terms of as producers?
I guess
producing artists?
Maybe both as producers, but also just kind of like people, just to come
general.
out of your shell, to get comfortable revealing yourself and your inner expression like that. It can be really tough for really anybody, I guess, in any walk of life.
Mm, absolutely. It can be a challenge, especially with so many people struggling from depression and anxiety in our culture, imposter syndrome, as you've already mentioned. Right. So you might have artists and people in general who are really talented, really gifted, but they clam up when it's time to open up about who they are, or to showcase what it is they do well. And I can relate to that. I think many people can relate to that. However, for us, it's about creating an environment of support from the very beginning, right? Coming in and showing and establishing that the space is a safe space. And for the gender amplified camps, one of the things we do is we typically will bring in, either virtually or in person, an expert, a producer who is doing well, or an artist that is doing well, and we'll have an open and candid conversation. It's one of the things that 2 camps ago, we had Madam Gandhi come and speak to our cohort of artists, and she was very candid and very open about her struggles. And it really resonated with the producers. It really made them open up, and they were able to move through the process of the camp in their authentic selves.
Mm.
And I think that's part of the strategy is relatability. Folks tend to be afraid when there's a lack of understanding, right? So creating a space where people feel understood, and where you have made it possible for them to understand you, I think helps to intercede as far as building trust, because opening up is the product of building trust. And there are small ways that one can establish that sense of understanding. Smiling is one way. I've noticed personally that when I'm in a good space and I'm able to smile and able to meet people with a smile, it's rare that I'm not met with the same. Right? I think we tend to mirror each other as people, and we tend to all want the same set of things. Right? What cuts across all of our realities is the desire to be loved, to be seen, to be acknowledged, to survive, right? We have the same existential fears, and we have the same wants and wishes. We all want to be successful. We want to have abundance in our lives, right? So if the thing that cuts across all of our individualized circumstances are those basic things. So I attempt to meet people with the most basic form of communication I possibly can. Hello, hi, a smile, basic acknowledgement, I think helps to break down the stronghold that exists between people. Then it creates tension, or that creates fear, or just a lack of understanding.
Mm. Oh, that's great. Yeah, I mean, we all share that, and showing vulnerability is definitely a good way. And also, sometimes what happens is people come with like the guard up to protect themselves,
Right.
because on the other end of the need for acceptance and love is the fear of rejection.
Oh,
And
for sure. Yeah.
one way to fight that is to not let anybody in, and that can be I deal with that a lot with my teenage
Me
students,
too.
and it's a
Yeah. Yeah.
protection thing.
hmm
But yeah, sometimes it is just the smile. I think I agree with you. It's like my biggest tool too. It's just
Yeah.
I'm here to help. I'm rooting for you.
Absolutely. hmm
That's great, and I just think it's so important to, like you said, like there's so much pain in our world, to
hmm
give people a place where they can be real, be themselves, and be celebrated for their work. It's got to
hmm
be really validating and helpful
hmm
on
hmm
so many levels,
hmm
even aside from music production.
hmm hmm 1,000%.
Yeah, that's really nice stuff you're doing. So we'll make sure we put like links in the show notes for that for people to
Please.
check
Yeah, that
out.
would be
Yeah,
great. That would be
yeah.
awesome.
Is what I don't have it pulled up right now, but is there the website for that they people can
Yes,
check that out?
it's genderamplify.org, which I'll throw in the
Org.
chat really
Okay.
fast.
Yeah, that's good. I'll put that in there. I kind of forgot if it was net or com, but
Yeah, yeah.
.org.
Dot
Yeah.
org. Yeah.
Yeah, it's a great thing to check out. People can contribute to that too, like donations and stuff.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
We accept donations through PayPal for folks who want to give online.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, that's great. And then I guess they can apply as well. So
Mhm.
yeah,
The application
awesome.
process is invite only, but I'm happy to send it
Okay.
to you to send out if you have students that are in the New York area. We're happy to receive an application from them. And the
Nice.
application is rolling too.
Yeah. Okay. Yeah. So good. And just again, like here you are, you're not obligated to do this at all. And it's really cool that you're passing that on to people. Good job.
Thank you.
One of the things that came up in the emails back and forth was just TikTok, the
Yes.
way TikTok, I mean, it's people talking about a lot how TikTok is kind of changing everything in so
Mhm.
many ways, but especially in music. And
Yes.
you have some interesting thoughts on that. I thought I would see if I can get you to share with us.
No, I think TikTok has really helped to revolutionize the way we receive music and the way we interact with music. And I think it is the predecessor of what eventually will be community-based music making, where
Mm,
artists, musicians put out music, but it's just the beginning, right? Listeners want ways to engage with music.
mm,
They want to remix, and for so long they haven't had the tools of the DJ or the music producer who can take stems and do a remix. But TikTok has allowed people to find their own ways to remix music or to remix sounds. You're finding that a lot of these viral moments are basically the repurposing of sections of songs. It's when a song goes viral on TikTok, it's usually the creative repurposing of the song through memes that allows these video content creators to help perpetuate the song and to push it forward. And in the best case scenario, the song, the original song, and the artist who created it will reap the benefits of the constant repurposing and exposure, the reintroduction of the music. But in terms of the end user, I think it's just the beginning of what is a cultural desire to have some sort of stake or ownership in popular songs.
mm,
These content creators on TikTok are using the platform to engage with music in a way where they're creating their own individualized version of the song. And it doesn't require any musical skills, right? It just requires, knowing how to identify the elements of the song that are captivating and creating their own individualized video to it. And it takes absolutely no musical know-how. I think more and more we're finding that is the desire of a lot of people online, or a lot of fans, a lot of supporters of music, lovers of music, is wanting to find a way to create their own. Um, so yeah, those are some of my ideas. And as we're seeing artificial intelligence move more and more into the music space and creating technologies that allow creatives or content creators to pick apart popular songs. I think it's really just the beginning of what will be a much larger landscape for that.
mm. I like that you use the term creative to describe what people are doing because you have to think of it, right? Like take like the Fleetwood Mac, the video,
Mhm,
dreams with the skateboarding, like
mhm,
that worked because it was a perfect combination of things, the vibe of the video. In my sampling class for Berkeley, one of the projects is to take 3 different samples, music, spoken word, and then some sound from your like childhood or some sound that's like nostalgic to you, not necessarily childhood, but to combine them. And
mhm,
the real lesson is to pay attention to how each one affects the other, how it
mhm,
changes the meaning, right? To
mhm,
give you like a simple example, I guess if I took like a presidential speech and then put like circus music behind it, it's going to make whatever that person is saying sound silly, even the most serious issues. Whereas if you put like kind of more serious sci-fi
Right, right.
music, totally new vibe. So, as you're speaking about this, it kind of clicked to me that the video aspect is sort of like a sample with the musical sample coming together, and there's a new thing that gets created as a result. So these two things come together to make something that's almost like a new art form that we're only just getting used to.
What is other than a remix? I've always thought of it that way. I mean, it's not a remix in the sense of doing a new mix of a pre-existing record, or a remix in the sense of something that a DJ does, but it is a reproduction. It is a repurposing of a previous work. It is a derivative work. So I think people are finding great creative expression through this. And in addition to that, they're building community, right? That's why it matters, because everybody else is doing it. So the continuation of it is the result of its popularity among the populace, right? Its popularity among people. So I love the cultural expression of it. I like when we all get together, irrespective of race and gender and sexuality and religion, and we can all do something together as a cultural exercise that takes our minds away from the ills of the world, or whatever issues exist that tear us apart.
It is nice when you see, excuse me, when you see people all getting on this one like thing. We're all making a certain video. We're having fun with it. And it is one of the nice, social media people talk about all the ills of that, which is a different topic, I guess. But there are some cool things that happen, where you can just see all kinds of people getting on board. Sometimes it's a cause, the ice bucket challenge or something, or sometimes it is skateboarding to dreams and using that, but it's something that like we're all doing, and it is nice. I think especially because as all of our like media has gotten more personal, like it's on our phone. It used to be the television, and everyone in the room is watching the television, and everyone that you see at work or at school watched the same shows as you. So we all had like a common cultural reference point, but I think there's a lot of separation going on now. I find that with students, my younger students in high school, there's not like the show everyone watches anymore where there used to be. There's not the movie everyone saw, even the album everyone was listening to. But these things are now becoming that thing.
The thing everyone's doing, right? Or everyone's engaging with.
They're all doing that dance. They're all doing this particular thing now. And you're like, oh, okay. It's like, and when you're in on it, it's fun. It's like, oh yeah, I know what that is. Like, cool. Like, we're part of something.
Yeah, I enjoy that part of it too. I don't do very many dance challenges, but I know about a lot of them because I watch them and I find them super entertaining. Like when you watch one, you come across and it's super well done, and then you watch the ones that are not so well done, and you have appreciation, but appreciation for all of them, because people are having fun. Folks are not sitting down doing nothing. They're active. They're using their bodies. They're getting some form of exercise. I think it makes people inherently happier than if they were just sitting around watching television, or doing, whatever sedated activities there are. And there are many of them, but I love the dance challenges. I also love seeing all of the athletics. There are lots of really, really talented athletes these days on social media as well. It's become a new form of promoting athletics and, building the athlete's brand before they get out of high school, which I also think is great because it's giving a lot of agency back to these athletes.
Yeah, that's an important thing, and like direct connection to the fan. I mean, especially, where music has gone and the different times we're in now, that you can at least have that power, that the only connection that there really can be, if it's just the artist directly to the fan. What I'm trying to say is it's not something like the record company can take away. It's not something that can just kind of vanish, because it's that there's no intermediary between those. That's really powerful.
Absolutely.
Do you find, and do you think this could be a thing that happens, that there will be music, more and more music anyway, produced specifically for this type of thing? So where,
For sure.
right now it's like we're using stuff that existed and we're pulling things and we're creating things, but is it going to be where, no, this is a song that's meant to go with this video we're going to make, and it's going to be a thing? It's like it's a TikTok release almost.
I think that's already happening. I think that's already fairly prevalent. Is a concentration on making music that will work for TikTok consumption. Now, how far the artist goes with that is, I think there's a gradient there. But I find that most artists think about the TikTok audience as they're making music. At least a general thought. Maybe not necessarily crafting songs specifically for the platform's algorithm, but I think an artist today that doesn't think about TikTok when they're creating, I think that's kind of a foreign idea. TikTok, I don't want it to sound like I'm speaking about something that's foreign by using TikTok or speaking specifically about TikTok, as much as I'm talking about markets, attempting to talk about markets and audiences. People making music are always concerned about markets and audiences. That is, if they intend to get their music out. And I think different artists know what markets their music will work for and what markets they like to capture, what audiences they would like to engage with their work. People typically don't make music with the intention of it sitting on a hard drive. They want to have engagement. So saying that people are conscientiously thinking about TikTok is really just me. I'm not saying anything new. I think artists are always concerned about where music ends up. And there is a lot of focus on TikTok now because TikTok is breaking songs. It's one of the few social media platforms that is consistently breaking songs. I don't know that there is another that is consistently breaking songs and breaking artists simultaneously.
Yeah. Yeah, I mean, you hear about it all the time, and it's just kind of like what happens now. And I guess
but TikTok, sorry.
Yeah, I'm just to further your point, it's nothing new, right? Like people were writing to fit the radio format, MTV,
right?
Even streaming kind of changed the way some songs were written, where you want kind of your hooks up front a little earlier, just so people don't skip. It's just the next thing that's going on.
Right. Or, back in the day when artists did, 12-inch singles for clubs, for the DJs, to play in the discotheques. Artists have always been thinking very critically about what compositional elements need to exist in their records so that their records have the greatest chance of discovery. It's nothing new.
Yeah, it's sort of the way the system, the formats and the scenarios inform the art, and there's this funny feedback loop, where the music also creates those things as well. So you have the dance club because you have the music, but then it's like, well, we want to make it work here. We make it work the other way around too.
Yeah. If you wanted DJs, and just to take it back to my point about the discotheque or Studio 54 or whatever, you couldn't go up to the DJ with 3 minutes on. You know,
Right.
if you wanted the hottest DJ to play your record, you needed to create, you know, the extended version of that to play in the clubs. You know, so it's you know, and then there's the radio version, right? That needs to be south of 3 minutes and 45 seconds or 3 minutes and 30 seconds, because in the same way the disc jockey in the club needs the long version, the disc jockey on the radio needs a shorter version of
Right.
what you would hand the guy. You know, so we're always thinking about that, because artists are concerned about markets. They're concerned about audiences. People want their music heard. So any artist that isn't studying markets is, to me, is missing an opportunity to maximize their reach. Some artists are just creating purely for self-expression, and that's fine. But for the artists who are really looking to connect, you have to know the rules of the game, and it doesn't matter who you are. I mean, Whitney Houston had to do this. Michael Jackson had to do this. Prince had to do this. It's not there's no artist, big or small, that is exempt from having to study audiences.
Right. So then you don't feel that this endangers anything artistically,
No.
the expression. It's a great point the way you put it too, because if you are going for expression, that means you are hoping to have expression. You sort of need someone on the other end of the expression.
Right.
Or else what is the expression? It's already in you, I guess, right? So what's the point? So
Right.
to kind of scoff at, you know, I'm sure you've come across artists, I can't be bothered with the market. It sounds like it taints the art, but in a way it makes the art as well. It makes it
I
possible.
think the artists that I have the most respect for and who have had a considerable amount of success, and I think are consummate musicians and consummate creatives, are meticulously concerned about audience. They're meticulously concerned about distribution and dissemination. It is a part of the creative process. I'll give an example. Bruno Mars, when he was making 24 Karat Magic, he wanted the record to get played in clubs, and he wanted it to feel larger than life. And he noticed that his band members and his producers, engineers, when they were working on the record, were just kind of coming to the studio dressed down. And he was like, guys, we're not embodying what we want this record to be. Like, we're not, there's no energy. Like, we're coming in here in sweats, talking about 24 Karat Magic. He was like, no, like, bring your best clothes, wear your Versace, wear your Gucci, like, dress up for the studio, because we need to get in character so that we can make this music, so that it can be received in the places that we want it to be received in. We want it in the club, we want it in the stadiums, we want it to embody a certain energy, but we're not even embodying that energy. There's nothing you can say about Bruno Mars as a musician. There's nothing you can say about him as an artist. He's one of the greatest musicians. He's the closest thing to Prince we have, but he's constantly thinking about audience. He bakes that into his production. He bakes it into his songwriting. He bakes it into the studio sessions. Everything, an artist is a total artist. You have to be just as creative and artistic about dissemination as you are about making the music. It's the same. It's all one thing. An artist is an artist. All of it is creative. So the idea that the creative part is in the studio, that's the greatest myth ever told. The creative part is all of it. You have to be just as creative about the release, about the tour, about the merch, about the radio campaign. You have to be just as creative about those things as you are about the making of the album. You know, so like I said, and Lizzo is the same way, and Beyonce is the same way. All the artists that we know, they've put 10,000 hours into their craft and 10,000 hours into the marketing, the production, the promotion, the showmanship of what it means to be an entertainer in the entertainment business. It's not just the music, it's the entire package that has to be considered.
I'm sure that makes it all more fun too, right? I mean,
Mhm.
now you're looking at marketing as an art. You're looking at all of this
It
stuff as
is.
another project in the art.
Mhm.
I love that image of everyone showing up in their best, decked out to record the album.
Right, right. He had a vision.
Yeah.
Like you said, the art of marketing. Marketing. Some of the more successful artists are marketing geniuses. Whether you're talking about Bruno Mars or Lady Gaga, you know, Miley Cyrus.
Hmm.
Um, some of the greatest artists of our generation are impeccable when it comes to marketing. Charlie Puth is another one. He's great at marketing. It is a requirement. It's
Hmm.
not an optional thing. It's if you want to be a successful artist, you have to identify ways to be just as engaging on social media, just as engaging. No one's going to find you,
Hmm.
right? Like you have to put time and energy into creating demand
Hmm.
for your art.
Yeah, I guess nowadays too, it's especially important because you go back in time a little bit, and when artists were putting out an album every couple of years, they were going on tour, and maybe they had a video and they had a little interview in a magazine. Like those were the only interactions you had with them. So the mystique was maybe a little easier to keep.
Mhm,
Whereas when you're able to be in contact with fans every single day,
mhm.
it has to stay interesting. And
Right.
if the internet has taught us anything, there's no shortage of talent.
Mhm.
As good as I feel one day, say on my guitar, I can find like a 7-year-old kid that blows me
Right.
out of the water on the internet.
Absolutely.
But those aren't always the musicians we go to either, the most
Mm.
talented musicians. It's like you said, there's more to it than that. There's also
Mhm.
staying entertaining in all these different aspects.
Mhm. Mhm. Absolutely.
It's a
And
really
it's
nice
it.
way to think about it, you know,
Mhm. Mhm.
because it really just deflates that whole kind of thing that many artists can get into, where, well, you know, I'm just about my art, but it's like, no, it's all your art. You have to take it
Mhm.
all.
Right. One of the things I love about Bob Dylan was he understood his audience. One of the reasons he was so prolific, one of the quotes I heard about Bob Dylan was that he could always write the song about the thing that was happening faster than anybody else could.
Hmm.
And whatever was happening, he could write the song faster and get it out faster than anybody. So what that lets you know is that he was very in tune with the world, what
Right.
was going on, what was happening. And he was able to contextualize those cultural moments in the form of lyric and melody and songs. But it's the urgency that was why he was so marketable.
Hmm.
The urgency is why he was so prolific because he had to beat the other artists to the punch. One of the things that Clive Davis mentioned about Bob Dylan was that people underestimate how badly he wanted to be successful. Bob Dylan wasn't just successful by happenstance, he put an effort into that. He understood his audience. He wrote songs for intending that they could be understood by audiences and represented by the people because he was their artistic emissary.
Hmm.
He was able to translate into lyric and melody what people were feeling, and I think, you know, and whose catalog recently was just sold for $500 million. I'm just saying,
Yeah. Right.
like this man, he understood the value of art, being marketable, being accessible, and commerce. And he's the consummate artist for a generation for that very reason. The Beatles are the same, right? We care about them because they sold records, right? We care about these people because they connected with markets. They
Hmm.
sold records. And you can't sell records without marketability, and you can't sell records without without a conscientious effort to relate your product with people, right? You're not just making songs, you're making music product, right? The music is the copyright information that is a part of the product, but the product is meant to stand as a unit of sale, right? So how are you finding a way to sell this music product, and connect it with people so that you can propagate your art and build a legacy around what you're doing?
Makes a lot of sense when you put it that way. And it kind of sort of, I think, insulates like those types of artists from all the, you mentioned like AI in music and just all these things that could be right around the corner, who knows, but they'll never do that stuff. It'll
No.
never, that'll be kind of the job security of the artist.
Right. Absolutely. And I'll say about that, there's always some odd desire among people of a certain age group to push back on technology. And what it has proven at every stage, is that it never replaces humans. Like, not in the creative spaces, right? Like, human beings, how many technological waves have we seen that have yet to replace humans? I think there will always be a desire for a human being as an artist, right? We've been automating lots of things for a long time. We've been automating various what am I trying to say? Various processes in music for a long time. Whether you're talking about the drum machines, automating drum production, whether you're talking about auto-tune, automating vocal harmony, quantizing and automatically quantizing pitch. We've been automating systems for convenience for a long time, and yet and still it is never replaced the human element. I think there'll always be a desire for an artist because artists have a story.
And auto-tune is a great example in that it got used artistically, that it got used in ways that were never imagined, and that became a sound and a thing. And I'm going to listen to Bruno Mars's album with what you just told me in mind. And that's like one of those intangible things, like as a recording engineer, it's not a track. It's not like track 32 is the outfits, but it gets on all of the other tracks. And when I listen to this, I'm going to picture these people in the studio decked out being like, we're doing this. This is what it, and that energy comes through that the other, the evil technology that's going to take over is never going to have that.
Absolutely. Yeah. I don't know. Like, I think we'll be just fine. What was it? The piano roll was supposed to be a threat to the music publishing industry at some point.
Right. Yeah. Then you could get your player piano.
Like every time, and the printing press was supposed to be a threat to, every new form of technology comes with a sizable amount of fear. Like, did we remember Y2K? Like, there's every major cultural shift is supposed to obliterate humankind, and it never happens. It never happens, and we continue to be creative. The music industry was supposed to be destroyed and decimated by the downloads and and the MP3 and cassette tapes and oh my God, what are we going to do about the, and at every turn, the industry has been able to properly pivot, and kind of rolled with the punches. And it's because of the innovation of human beings and the fact that people want to know that behind any music product is a human being. There's an artist. And that's the great thing about being in the music industry, is how volatile it can be, but how it never sits still, and all the technological advancements eventually are woven into a much more intricate industrial ecosystem. And that technology is conformed to the needs of the industry, and music still gets to the people, and artists still get a chance to create.
Hmm. And the artists find ways to take these new innovations in technology into something new. And like you said, with TikTok, it's becoming that. And it's now a collaborative thing with the audience. And I think that makes people feel more connected to the artists anyway. Now we're kind of in it
Yes.
together.
Yeah. And there is a next frontier that I'm learning about. It's not just AI, it's, the metaverse. And, I think there's great promise. I'm excited for the next 10 years of music.
Yeah, I was going to ask you if you're excited, just sort of as a joke, because I could tell you are. And I'm sure that's a big part of your success, is that you're embracing it. It's coming anyway, right? So
can't stop it.
You can't stop that wave. Yeah.
Learn, study, learn, study, get ahead of it. But the core of it all is going to be music. Making the best way to get ahead of it is to make great music. And then use the tools that are available and the tools that are coming to connect that music with people.
Right. Sounds like a good plan. Well, I know we're getting near our end of our time, so we can wrap this up. We want to remind people to check out genderamplified.org. And yours is eboniesmith.com, I believe, right?
Yes, eboniesmith.com. And, Ebonie Smith Music on most platforms. Ebonie Smith Music on Instagram, as well as TikTok. And also on Spotify. And I'm on Twitter, Ebonie Smith on Twitter.
Very good. So thanks so much. I appreciate all your insights and very forward-thinking attitude about things. Positivity is abundant here, so it's nice to spend some time with you.
Thank you.
Thank you all for listening, and I hope you check out Ebonie's work. You're probably familiar with some of it already, so take a little deep dive. There's a lot of great stuff there.
All good. All right. Thank you so much, and I'll see you.
Thank you. Hey, if you enjoyed the Music Production Podcast, please consider giving it a review on your favorite podcast provider and share it with a friend, somebody that you think might enjoy the show and get something out of it. That would mean a lot to me. And if you want to check out more of my work, including sound packs, tutorials, etc., head over to brianfunk.com. Thanks so much for listening, and have a great day.